the Daily. Today is the Daily for Monday, May 25th, 2026. My name is Elliot Moore. I'm a resident here at Church Where You Are, and I'm so excited to be joining you this morning. We are in day 21 of our 28-day Blueprint Challenge. But before we get into the devotion this morning, let me know in the chat where you're joining us from. Just put it in the chat or the comment section where you're joining us from, because we have people from all over the world that get to join us here at Church Where You Are. So again, just put it in the chat or the comment section where you're joining us from this morning, and you might find something that's a little bit closer than you would have thought. Today's verse is Romans 10, verse 9. And I'm going to read this verse in a different way this morning because I don't want to overanalyze it. I do believe that you can overanalyze Scripture. Sometimes not on purpose, but sometimes to maybe justify your actions or justify your life. So I don't want to do that with this verse. I'm going to read it like I normally do, but we're not going to break it apart piece by piece. We're just going to break apart the first part and then take the rest as it reads. So Romans 10 verse 9 says, "If you openly declare that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved." And again, as I mentioned, I think that can be overanalyzed. And I want to examine why we overanalyze that and why it's hard for us to understand such a simple sounding verse, but that could be applied very wrong. And the first and only piece I'm going to analyze within the actual verse is the very beginning. If you openly declare. It says, if you openly declare. And I really believe this to mean to say it out loud. And I believe this because I read it in as many translations as the YouVersion Bible app would provide. And they all said something along the lines of say it, declare it, confess it verbally. They all said something similar that would mean actually say it out loud. So I really believe this to be a literal statement. If you declare it, if you confess it, if you say it with your mouth, with your words, that Jesus is Lord, and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. And the only other part that I want to analyze and that I want to talk about more in depth is, why does it say believe in your heart? Don't you believe things with your mind? Don't you believe things with your mind? Because you reason and you think, okay, well, logically this makes sense, so I believe that. Or you hear something on the internet or on TV or on social media or wherever, and you think, okay, and then you reason out in your head and you think, yeah, I believe in that. So why does it say believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead and you will be saved? And the first part I'm going to say about that is, I think not only is the beginning a verbal thing, I also think that we need to back it up with our life and with our actions. And if you're not a Christ follower, and if you're new to this whole God thing, please hear me out, because I know what you're thinking. And I was thinking it too when I was writing this outline and getting ready to say this. There's always a catch in this world, right? When it's, oh, you'll get a free whatever. You see it on a commercial, and then it's like, yeah, all you have to do is pay for this and pay for this and buy this and buy this, and then you'll get a free t-shirt. I'm like, well, I'm $500 down, but now I get a free t-shirt? That doesn't sound free to me. So I know what you're thinking, and this is not a catch. What I'm simply saying is, once you believe that in your heart and confess it with your mouth, I believe that you will back it up with your life and with your actions because you love God, because you have seen Him move in your heart and in your life, not because it secures your spot with salvation, because it doesn't. When you confess this, when you believe in your heart that Jesus was sent by God and died for us and was raised from the dead under God's authority, your life and your heart and your actions will reflect that belief. But again, your salvation does not rest in that. Your salvation doesn't come from, well, I believe, and now I have to do this, and I have to do this, and I have to go to church, and I have to be in a Bible study, and I have to watch the church where you are daily devotionals. Your salvation doesn't rest in that. Your salvation just rests in His sacrifice and your belief in it. As it says, there's no catch. But once you believe that, your heart begins to change. Your mind begins to change. The way you see things begins to change. And I'm not saying radically. I'm not saying you're going to have this out-of-body experience and be completely different in one day. I'm just saying we will grow differently. We will learn differently. We will experience and see things differently. And that will change your heart. That will change your actions. And your actions being changed will change your life. So again, it's not a catch. It's just your heart will reflect what you believe in. So again, before I went to the next part, I wanted to say that. And as I mentioned earlier, I just want to talk about one more part of the verse. Because it says, if we believe in our hearts, not our minds. And that's so important because we think things out, we reason in our mind. And let's be honest, and I bet you never thought you were going to hear this from somebody that's teaching you about God, but a man that was murdered, a man that was hanging on a cross, with a spear shoved in his side, with nails in his hands. And I don't know if you know this, but without being too vulgar, in a Roman crucifixion, they had you on this cross, right? Nailed with your feet and nailed with your hands. And your back was bent. So you were almost leaning forward. So every time you had to take a breath, the wood would rub your back. And again, I'm going to bring up something gruesome because our God did this for us. So it's important to mention. So they did that. So when you were leaning forward and your back was rubbing on this very coarse, very rough wood, every time you took a breath, it would open up your back. Every time you took a breath, it would rub and scratch and scar your back. So much so that a lot of your spine would be exposed. And I know it's not something we normally talk about, and that's a gruesome fact, and I'm sorry if you didn't want to hear that, but our God did that for us, so we need to talk about it. Every time you took a breath, this wood would rub, and again, a lot of biblical scholars and just historians in general would say that it would rub so much that a lot of their spines would be exposed by the time they were dead, or by the time it was over. And again, I bring that up because that's not logical. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense that a man could go through that, die, and 3 days later, by his own power, by God's authority, get up. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't. Not if we use our mind. Not if we use logical thinking. And again, I bet a lot of you are thinking, wow, I didn't think he was going to say that. Because it doesn't. But if we reason with our hearts, if we reason and use logic with our hearts, then it's like, oh wait, his love prevailed. His love for us was so strong that he was able to conquer death. His love for us was so strong. He went through all that pain, all that suffering, all that mockery, conquered death for the people that won't even acknowledge him. For the people that believe there is no God. For the people that believe there is a God and they want nothing to do with him. Our God did that for them too. That's not logical. That's love. Love isn't logical. So when it says believe in your hearts, I believe that's what it means. Because if he used logic, if he used reason with his mind, he would say, well, why would I do that for those people? Why would I go through that suffering and conquer death for those people? I don't think he used his mind. I think he used his heart. I think he used his heart. The love that he had in his heart was enough to say, I'll do that for those people. I will conquer death for the people that won't even acknowledge me. I'll conquer death for the people that call themselves Christians and turn their back on me. And I said I didn't want to overanalyze it because one, it almost brings me to tears, and two, what more can you say about that? Our God didn't use his mind. Our God used his heart. He used the love he had in his heart. So it would be right for us to use our mind to believe in him. To reason out if it makes sense. Because no, it doesn't make sense. A man that can rise from the dead by his own authority, by his own ability. A man that claimed to be God. A man that will go through all that suffering. People that hate him. Logically, that doesn't make any sense. But when you experience the love of God, it doesn't apply to your logic and your mind. It applies to your heart. Something in your heart just flips a switch. You think, oh, that's the love he was talking about. That's the love he has for me. I don't understand that love in my mind. But that hits in the heart. So that is what I believe that means. And I'm sure you've had a similar experience. If you're not a religious person, which I don't like that term, but if you're not a Christ follower or not a part of this God thing, I'm sure you've done illogical things for your spouse, for your kids, for your loved ones. I'm sure that if you're a dad, you've given your kid money for something that you knew they didn't need or wouldn't use, or something that they would play with for a little while and then get rid of it. And I'm sure that you knew that the store was overcharging you. That's not logical. Or wives, I'm sure you've done illogical things for your husband. I'm sure you followed him around on some adventure that you knew didn't make any sense, that would probably lead to the wrong direction. But you still went with him. Because it was logical? No. Because you love him. And that's what our God did for us. Thank you so much for joining me on another edition of The Daily. I would encourage you to come back for our 28-day challenge. We're almost done. We just take one verse and we talk about what it means for our lives, and we talk about how we can apply it to our lives. So thank you so much for joining me, and I hope to see you tomorrow.